Welcome back to Sawdust in the Basement. I'm your host, Mr. Red Shirt Man with a terrible camera angle. Okay, in all seriousness. This is episode 4. The final one. Everything but the kitchen sink. So, I'm just going back to the body here. I've got my binding trim router set up, but I have a standard flush trim in it, and I'm going to use it to cut the top and the back flush with the sides real quick. So we can go on to sanding and leveling and all that fun stuff. So something to remember in this is that you always want to be cutting downhill, basically into the waist or something like that. This helps with tear out, and occasionally it means a climb cut, but that's not too bad on this. There's a good chance I've said it before, but I'll say it again. This vacuum clamp is gotta be one of the best tools for this kind of stuff. I'm sorry, but trying to hold this any other way is nothing but challenging. So I'm just cutting out the pointy bits and leftovers, getting ready for the binding trims. So I'm going to start with the little piece at the end of the Florentine cutaway, that pointy little part here. So I'm just cutting it out of some ebony. I'm not quite sure what possessed me to force myself to do this with hand saws and whatnot, but here we are. And now we're 90% of the way through the cut, and work holding has become a real challenge. And the dog keeps barking in the middle of my voiceover. Just a little bit of sanding to level the body sides in preparation for binding. And more sanding. And still more sanding. And dust collection with this is a real challenge. And a little zero cote back graft coming right up. I think I do need to find a way to kick this vacuum pump somewhere else in the room, though. It is a little noisy on camera. Either that or I need a better microphone. So to help prevent tear out on the end grain, I've glued a couple extra little blocks you can't really see underneath that will be routed through. They're just scrap blocks. Nothing special. And there's the little block I was talking about. Now you see it? No, you don't. So, what time is it? What do you guys think? Should I consider some background music for this or something? Yeah, let me know in the comments. Although I will admit, trying to find background music has been a real challenge. So, at this point, the agreement is binding. Yeah, I know. That's a cutting remark. Okay, I'll seal myself out now. Wait, this is my house. So, I'm cutting in for 2mm binding here, and I'll add a 1mm purfling stack later. Oh, hi Pete. So I decided to do this one in 2 passes. I'm just testing my fitment here. I think you get the idea at this point. So let's skip to actually fitting the binding next. So I didn't run over my little Venetian cutaway, and instead I'm going to actually fit the bindings to butt into it. It's just a slightly different technique I like to use sometimes. And now to start with the most difficult piece of binding, the inside cutaway of the back. It's just a real troublemaker. The compound curve causes trouble, and I've just never really had one fit as well as I would like. Yes, I know. It's a big, scary clamp. Don't you worry, we're not going to break anything. I really ought to invest in Scott's or 3M or something. The amount of masking tape I go through has got to be boosting the stock price. So even with all those clamps and all the fight to get the binding perfectly bent, there was still gaps. So here I've taken some end grain sandings of this Wenge binding. I'm sliding it into the gaps, then I'll backfill with a little bit of thin super glue. By the time I'm done, you'll hardly notice. Little bit of level sanding. I think I used some 150 on my sander. I don't really remember. And now to transfer the position of that arm bevel block so that I can cut in the arm bevel itself. Lessons learned. Apply a little bit of masking tape and cut into it with the router bit. It helps with tear out. I forget exactly where I picked up this trick about using masking tape, applying it, then cutting it away to transfer a curved template to a flat surface. But it is quite useful. So this is an odd piece of material. It's actually fumed eucalyptus. Nice and dark, not super crack happy, just something I had. So the rounded corners can be a little difficult to fit sometimes, so I'm using the soldering iron to bend it just a touch. Basically like a miniature bending iron for the sides. I'm just going to let the CNC carve the bridge here. I went to all the trouble to model it, and quite frankly, there's enough tight geometry I'd rather just have it be precise. Now we're going to do something a little bit unusual, something I don't see very often in acoustics, other than sunbursts. We're going to stain this. It's part of the reason I chose maple in the first place. So I'm starting with a layer of turquoise Angelus dye, and then I will perimeter it in Angelus blue. And now I've taken a little bit of just straight up alcohol here mixed with the dye, and I'm sort of working between the turquoise and the blue to blend the two colors together. Now before I actually apply finish to this, I'm going to go ahead and what they call floss the neck, get the angles just right, but I'm applying some tape here. First masking tape, and then some packing tape on top of it to be able to build up and keep the sandpaper from potentially scuffing the actual body itself. And because I'm having a little bit of trouble determining fitment here, I'm using some engineer's die chem to try and figure out where I'm touching and where I'm not. It didn't work as well as I'd hoped. And now to precisely mark out the bridge location so I can cut it out of this bit of masking tape before finishing. I don't like having to scrape the finish away from where the bridge pad is. I much prefer to not have it attached to there in the first place. And as you can see, it's a lot of checking, rechecking, double checking, triple checking, and then drilling a hole. I don't remember why I decided to do this. This is a first coat of the finish I'll be using, which is a water-based lacquer, MTech EM6000 to be specific. I got the water base so that I could try applying it with my spray gun indoors, and yet here I am applying a first coat with a brush. Why? Can't deny that that's a gorgeous color. Well, you can, but I'm not going to listen to you. So I didn't take any footage of the actual spraying process, so here I am trying to deal with some runs. Learning this water-based stuff has been a real challenge. It seems to either be just too thin and kind of orange peel, or too thick and runs. It's really tricky stuff. I'll get it though. Wet sanding. You don't need to watch this. Notice I've switched to a paper that I can use dry. If you don't let this water-based stuff cure long enough, which apparently I didn't, it actually starts to lift the finish and it looks terrible. And I'm not going to pretend I have half the patience required for doing this kind of sanding. I really don't. So I've pulled the masking tape pad because with it and the finish, it's a high spot, which means when I go to sand it, it won't quite be level. Now I can sand it level. And now to reapply the masking tape prior to polishing. Oh my, look at that shine. So it turns out my reamer fits in my drill. You just gotta be careful not to overdo it. Yeah, I know. Gold hardware is not a popular choice. But I think it really fits with this without being overkill. If you catch the name on the tin, you'll know what I'm using on the screws here. It's screw wax. No. That's not what I mean. It's wax for the screws. So the black nut you see there is a little bit thinner than the white one I'll eventually use. Because of that, I'm using it like a spacer for my saw blade. We've all heard of the half pencil trick, but have you heard of the one-sided scalpel trick? And no, I'm not taking my fancy graph gear and turning it into a half pencil. Don't even suggest it. So I'm just using a standard triangle file here, registered in those little slots to be able to create a better spot for my nut files. It turns out the taper on these countersink drill bits is actually fairly similar to the taper for bridge pins, which makes this quite useful for roughing out. Little trick, put some Sharpie on your pin reamer before you cut your first hole. When you find the right size, what will happen is the Sharpie will polish off the spot all the way up till your cut depth. It gives you a really nice stop. So, in my infinite wisdom, I didn't get any playing footage or sound samples of this one before I had to send it off. So, we'll just have to make do with this little outro montage. Thanks for sticking around this long. I hope to see you on the next one.